20 Minute Tim's flagship episode 296. I'm your host Jamie, joined by Melly.
You are?
And Stephen.
Alright.
And I am alright, Stephen, because the Livingston hoodoo, it is gone, deceased, it is unalive.
It ceased to be.
Yeah,
yes.
and I'm very, very pleased to hear it. It just means we don't get to hear, it's been 15 years since the last league win, or some other thing. And as much as that's a bit of a fudged statistic, it is good to say it, just to hear people go, oh, they've been in the league for 10 years. Yes, that's why it's a remarkable thing to say. And then they have to correct you with going, sorry, they correct you by going, oh, well, it's actually only 5 games. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot to not beat anyone in this league. 5 games at a certain stadium. It's nothing to do with anything. You can't blame Ange Postecoglou for what happened in the intervening 16 years or whatever it was since we won there. But I do agree, it's good to just kill it. We don't need to worry about it anymore. That's basically us for another 15 years. If we don't win again for 15 years, we won't have broken that previous record.
Well, we are going to get them, Melly, probably in the split. They look as if they're going to make the top 6. We will get them in the split. So let's not...
A blight on Scottish football, that, to be honest.
You know what? I was going to say let's not count our chickens, right? But Melly, that... everything about Livingston, they're the new Hamilton, aren't they?
Yeah.
You really want rid of them. That pitch is a disgrace. The stadium is a disgrace, although they do give us a good away allowance. The manager is really annoying me. I don't really buy into the guy very much. The football, everything about them, the football they play is crass.
Calling it football is pushing it, man. It's diabolical to watching. Like, the stadium's not the worst, but when you're at the match,
the name is.
Oh
yes.
If you're at the match and you just don't focus on the pitch at all and just look round and see a full house at an away game, this is what Scottish football should be like most of the time when Celtic or even if the other ones visit. It should be full houses. It should look like that. Then you look at the pitch and you go, oh, I hope that sun goes away because people are going to watch that and see it. It is diabolical, man.
I said on our Twitter feed, Stephen, that an artificial grass pitch should bear some passing resemblance to playing football on grass, but that thing, see when the sun hits it, it just looks like the shredded up bin bags that it is.
It's just sort of grass imitating plastic, really. Just don't use the word grass if it's not even an attempt at artificial grass.
Well, that's my point.
It looked like one of those, like a 1970s sofa, where, so those things. In fact, we could even do it on these chairs here. See, you can kind of scratch patterns in it. It looked like one of those just painted green and laid out on Almonville.
The thing is, these complaints that we've got about the state of the pitch fall on deaf ears, because that's not where Livingston play their football. They've got that, they play it in the sky. Yeah. They play football up there, so they don't really need to worry about the state of the pitch below them, and that was their approach to the game. Just get it forward.
Yeah, and that's what they do. You kind of think, oh nah, they'll be all right. I think John Paul said at the match, maybe because they're playing, they're getting decent results, they might come out a bit. And I was like, well, mate, they're not going to come out a bit. And they did exactly what you expect them to do every time. They even got a free kick just inside their own half that they put both their centre-backs up into Celtic's box and their goalkeeper launched it. It was long throws, corners. That was the only way they get any opportunity. I counted in the second half, I think 5 or 6 was the most passes they made in the whole game before launching it. What is that? What is the point in that?
Before the game, Stephen, Celtic had announced maybe a changed lineup, you might call it. There was a number of changes in the side, and people were like, is this injuries? Is it bad performance? Is it tactical tweaks specifically to cope with what Livingston were going to throw at us? Was it a combination of all three? But however it was, though, it worked because we were right after Livingston for the first minute.
Oh, yeah. We sat down to do, Melly was at the game, we sat down to do the big match build-up on Patreon Live before it. And the lineup was a huge source of the discussion. There were huge things that I agreed with in that lineup, but also some things that I couldn't understand the logic of at all. Now, thankfully, after the game, I'm forced to be like, well, Ange knows best, certainly knows better than me, because
it's weird having a manager that sees to know what he's doing.
That knows better than me.
What did you totally disagree with? Forrest, the only thing I could maybe go.
The
inclusion of Near Bitton must have raised an eyebrow or two, Melly, with you.
Yeah.
Well, kind of, but because of the game during the week against St Mirren, when Beaton came on, it got McGregor further forward, and that's when Celtic started to look better as well. Tom Rogic came on during the week and changed the game, and James Forrest done quite well when he came on during the week. But when you're looking at the guys they replace, I can't really make any any real argument for Hatate right now. He was diabolical in midweek.
He was really bad.
And Matt O'Reilly, maybe, but the way I sort of looked at it for the game at the weekend was it was three guys in midfield that all can keep a hold of the ball. And when you're playing against...
I've known that since Ronnie Dyler.
Yeah.
The three of them.
Rolling back the years with experience with Forrest and McGregor as well. But it was three guys that have got a good first touch, can keep a hold of the ball. But what I felt we did what we did do during the game was get the ball out wide quickly. So it was three guys that good first touch and get it out wide quickly, because that's where we had the space filled in against Livingston. And once the game's over and done with, you can see exactly why Ange done it. I understand why. Look, if this is the way Ange plays, you don't want Beaton and Rogic in a midfield together because it's fast attacking football. Yeah. But for that game, and it kind of put to bed this thing, Ange only plays one way, because there was tactical tweaks in that game to work around Livingston, and he did change certain players for their physicality in that as well. So I think it was a mixture of everything.
And to get a result, Ange had to roll back the year, Stephen. But simply read off the page, that lineup was quite surprising.
That's been building up for several minutes. I could feel the tension rising in the room there.
What's been building up?
100% worth it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, to answer your question, Billy, I wouldn't say that I totally disagreed with it. That's maybe overstating it. But here are the surprises: Ralston instead of Juranovic. Again, these aren't outright shocks, but they were surprises on the day. Ralston instead of Juranovic. McGregor being moved forward a little bit. Beaton being the guy who accommodates that instead of maybe Ideguchi. I think it's maybe idealistic to want Ideguchi. I think he's the one everyone wants to see, but really Beaton's probably more. In fact, based on the evidence, he is the guy more suited to it just now. Forrest on the right, no Giacomakis, because everyone was building themselves up for that for months. It seemed like he was the Livingston guy. He was the secret weapon that was going to finally unlock the Livingston thing. So all of that added up to a big old raised eyebrow. My eyebrow was in the back of my head at one point. Yeah, basically. But I have to say,
we are the people's eyebrow.
All of the surprises. Every one of them paid off. Every single one of them. I can't argue with a single one of those choices, even if it is just as simple as just freshening things up a bit. Now, all these players that came in to the team, they were all, again, I can only describe them as surprises, because that's what it was when that was read out. But when you actually look to what it sought to fix, none of the players that came out, as you said, were justifying their place. Juranovic, I would probably make a case for. He's probably still the, whatever you want to call it, first choice or more regular right back. Other than that, the midfield needed to be changed.
Totally. I think that's it. I mean, Celtic have been going through a bit of a slump recently. The blip, it was kind of over against. We did sort of get the St Mirren out of the way, but that was much more like it, Melly. That was more like the football that we'd seen from Ange. And I think to get that, he couldn't just keep persisting with the same lineups. I mean, you said Hatate was really, really poor midweek, and I know you. I can't remember if you one of these podcasts or a Patreon podcast. You were like, I'm quite happy to give him the benefit of the doubt when he's trying stuff, but he kind of took the piss out of it a wee bit.
There's a limit.
He kind of took the piss out, so maybe he was just trying too much, but none of it was coming off. So those changes were really needed, Mel. And you were saying like some of the tactical differences that Ange put in place for this game.
Yeah, just. Well, it kind of feeds into the Hatate and O'Reilly thing. Hatate more so than O'Reilly. Hatate's a bit that sort of, I think I've described it at the matches, that chaos factor where he'll get the ball and try and make things happen. But in a game like that against Livingston, they're going to congest the centre of the midfield. So that's why there was three guys in there. And look, I slated Forrest, Beaton and Rogic last week after the European game. I don't want to see them in European games, but they came in on during the week all three at once, and I was like, Ange, what are you doing to me here? But they done well, and then they done well again at the weekend. But because it's so congested in the centre midfield, that's what Livingston want. They want it in there so they can get it out and shell it down the channels and try and hit Greg Taylor, and they probably thought Juranovic would have played. But what Celtic have been doing all season is using the inverted fullbacks, and we didn't use that quite as much because the space was out on the wide areas. So Celtic do have the fullbacks overlapping, but they sort of stretched it out a bit more and stayed wide a lot of the time this time and went beyond the wingers. And I think that's why Forrest came in for a Maeda, because he does sort of hug that touchline a bit more, which meant all Celtic had to do was get it into the midfield and spray it out wide, and we had a overlap every single time. And for Martindale being this brilliant manager and tactician and all that, how he didn't spot that, the amount of crosses Celtic put in, and a big difference again yesterday was Celtic finally put in some good crosses. They put in very dangerous crosses, and I thought 2 wide players for Celtic were good. Jota was back to his near best, and the 2 fullbacks put in decent balls, but the amount of ground they covered was absolutely incredible. And I've got a question for the 2 of you.
Okay, go for it.
Josip Juranovic is a better footballer than Tony Ralston.
Okay.
But is Tony Ralston more, or just as, or maybe more effective than Josip Juranovic right now?
I don't think that's as controversial as you think. I know.
I love Ralston, and everybody's going to think, hey.
I see where you're going with that, but when you talk about...
Sorry, just to interrupt, Stephen, because I want to just pick up Melly on one little thing. What is the difference between better footballer and more effective?
Right, okay.
Well, Josip Juranovic is technically a better footballer than Tony Ralston, but Tony Ralston has the physical advantage over him. So in a game like that, you can go, right, that's another guy to mark in there. That's maybe another thinking why Beaton came in. He did mark one of the two tallest players. Beaton always picked up one of them.
Well, prior to that game, sorry to interrupt, prior to that game, just on your point there, Ralston is one of only, I think, 2 players this season to have scored a header. Maeda was the other one.
Oh,
yeah.
That's interesting.
I may have made that up, but I can't think of any more though, because Carter Vickers hasn't. No. Starfelt certainly hasn't. Beaton, I don't think
hasn't he? Dundee.
Yeah,
he scored the perfect hat-trick.
But he didn't start, of course.
Yeah, Kyogo's got one against Dundee as well.
He didn't start either.
No. So that is true. So with Ralston, I think he's got that physicality where he's good in the tackle, he's strong, he's decent in the air, he's kind of could be a centre half playing at right back. But with Juranovic, it's more technical. His first touch is brilliant, he's got a good cross, but Ralston's got that power drive where he runs and goes beyond, and we've seen it with this second goal. He just manages to bend his run round and put these balls in. While Juranovic has got a few assists and some decent crosses, I think Ralston's all-round game was maybe perfect for that game, and it just shows that Ange isn't going to go, this is my way of playing, these are the players that play. He's got horses for courses here, and he's going to put different players in, and I thought putting Ralston in was brilliant because we've seen solid in the tackle, great defensively, and he set up a goal and cemented his place as the most assists this season for Celtic.
Yeah, and I don't know if that necessarily counts as an assist because it took a touch. Yeah, it counts in our hearts.
Assists are mostly made up anyway.
Yeah, but that cross, obviously very difficult to deal with because 2 players had a go at it, and all they served to do was one set up the other to knock it into the net, and the Livingston player. So yeah, Ralston has been great. We spoke about this before the game, and we talked broadly across the various surprises. I keep using that word to describe the lineup, but I can't really think of any others. Get in touch with more words for surprise.
Yeah. Write in the comments synonyms for surprise.
What I said was that was the one I was least concerned about because I don't think there's all that huge a drop-off between Juranovic's contribution to Ralston. I just don't think there is. Juranovic has scored a load of penalties this season, but Ralston has been getting some quite important goals, some huge goals actually, in fact, this season, and the assists we've already mentioned, but the big tackles, he's provided an awful lot, and I months ago gave up on this idea of talking about Ralston as if, he's really good for Tony Ralston, isn't he? And I started talking about him as if he's a key member of this squad. Might not play every single game, but who cares? What we want is guys who can come in and deliver something when they're called upon.
What was that? Patreon.com / 20 minute Tims. Yeah, hear us talking an awful lot about stuff that you're probably not listening to. You're watching this, you're saying, Stephen, you said this before the game, I didn't hear it. Melly, you said that after the game, I didn't hear it. Well, if you want to hear it, patreon.com / 20 minute Tims.
If you want the receipts, for all this chat,
there's a link down there. Get involved, no excuses. The penalty, David Martindale, at the end of the match said, on the balance, Celtic probably deserved the win.
Thanks, David.
24 shots.
Yeah, but at least let us have one. If you're going to take that angle, David, be a bit magnanimous about it and let's have one win against you. But he did draw attention to a couple of the refereeing decisions that went against them. The first one was the penalty. You would feel very, very hard done by, wouldn't you, Melly, if that penalty was awarded against Celtic? The boy sort of slides, but the arm's behind him. I thought maybe the second penalty shout for the handball in Livingston box is probably more of a penalty shout than the first one.
I think the first one's a penalty. You'd be hate it to go against you, but you'd hate it if you didn't get it, because like the guy's arms on the ground, but it's in a place where the ball is hit straight on and it was going towards goal. So he can't move his arm, but at the same time, you can't not give a penalty for that. It's in the rules. It's a penalty. Martindale can moan all he wants, but if it was the other way around, he'd be screaming for it as well, wouldn't he? So I felt it was a penalty. It was up the other end for me, but you can see by the players' reaction as well that the Celtic players, that it's a penalty, and just you think, like, early doors, Livingston, settle the nerves, get a penalty, don't fluff it, fluffed it.
I totally understand the pain involved in conceding a penalty like that, when realistically there's nothing the guy could have done about it, right? Because it was supporting his body on the ground. He didn't intend to be there, presumably, right? I get all that thing, but what I've always thought about penalties and the handballs and the various wranglings and ambiguity that surrounds what actually is a handball, people often talk about unnatural positions as if it means anything. What is an unnatural? Put your hand in an unnatural position right now. Do it. It doesn't really mean anything. What I've always just thought is, like, it might be harsh, and I can agree with that, but if your team has gained a clear advantage from the ball striking your hand in the box in the act of you trying to block the ball, now he didn't try to block it with his hand, but ultimately did block it while he was trying to block the ball. If you've gained a clear advantage from that, then I struggle to see how you can't give a penalty, to be honest. I don't know, I'm being biased here, of course, and I do take on board what Melly has said about how you would be gutted if that would get called against you. But it's a handball in the box, ultimately.
I mean, didn't he score it?
No, there is that. Yeah.
And the thing about Martindale is his teams sort of rely on refereeing leniency because they're rough. They really put it about, and there's a few occasions, especially with Tom Rogic, and we were mentioning it, Melly, like we were watching the highlights again before we sat down to record. The only reason they get away with that is because Tom gives it back. But if that was someone else, there'd be free kicks all over the camp.
Oh, aye, and that was another one. He'd already had 2 in the game. He get booked for one of them.
That's right in front of the ref.
Yeah, and it's just free kick or unused goal, lads. That's how he's going to play. He's going to play physical. He's going to play for the set pieces, the throw-ins. It is absolutely brutal. I don't know how you can support a team like that. And if you're going to take the rough and the tumble, you have to be prepared to get it back. Because the thing that really pleased me as well about the game, as well as Celtic obviously winning, was the performance. But when Livingston had the ball, there was 2 free players round Celtic, and it wasn't just like sticking foots in, it was sticking foots in. Like, there was players going in, Cal McGregor, Beaton, Rogic, all stood up and put themselves about. 2 centre-halves, absolutely brilliant. So everybody at Celtic was ready to go out and fight and win. Fight and win,
Stephen. Do you think that was a marker that Ange put down for that game? Because, managers do this throughout the season. They have like little tent poles throughout the season and things they really want to achieve. Do you think that was one Ange went, right, I'm going to put this to bed?
Well, one would hope so, and it certainly played out with that.
Rangers game being won, this
definitely. Again, as we started by saying, it doesn't really mean anything. Ultimately, these, in the context of this title race, having lost several times or having dropped points to Livingston in the past doesn't mean anything, apart from the ones that happened this season, which was unfortunate. But it's so good to get those monkeys off the back and all that. They're just this nonsense that hangs over you. The next one is that knockout tie in Europe since 2004. Get that in the bin as well. But yeah, it was an important win because I was worried about it. I have to admit,
I've never been so nervous for a non-Rangers game in my life.
I was extremely worried about it, in part because of all the things we've just spoken about. Now, I can sit here now comfortable in the knowledge that we won the game, but prior to that, I was concerned about it because not only because we struggle against Livingston, and that's there in the stats previously, but they've been good. They've been putting results together, and they've somehow inexplicably crept up pretty high in the table, despite the agricultural football that they play. And just as an aside, see on that, Scottish football celebrates this pish too much. Too much. Man. This is what holds us back. This is what I live on the absolute dark ages in the football in this country. Look at the lionise this garbage.
Look at the difference between the sort of way people talk about David Martindale and his football teams and all that. fair enough, he has done quite well given that they're a provincial team,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Compared to how Sean Maloney gets treated the minute he walks in the door. Like he's got a week, Sean Maloney's got a week, and people are like, you need to stop all this. See all this football chat, you need to end it.
Jargon.
You know, you need a jargon. That was it. You need to end the jargon. Whereas David Martindale was like, they are the new Hamilton. They're the team everyone wants rid of. And I think he would probably enjoy that tag because he did say quite defiantly earlier on, I think it was October, November time, was like, my team are not going down. And I think they were second or second bottom of the table at that point. He knew his team weren't going down. Luckily for David Martindale, everyone else in this league is absolute dung.
There's 5 points between 4th and 10th.
Yeah.
So it could be MD that gets in the top 6.
Hibs haven't won. I think they've won. I'll get this wrong, but the gist of it's right. Hibs have won 1 game in their last 10. They've only scored 2 goals, but they're still 5th or something like that. They've no fun. That's how bad everyone else is. You can win 1 game in 10 and you're still no like relegation fodder. I watched, sorry to derail us, but did anybody see the Aberdeen game against Rangers?
No.
Aberdeen are awful. Absolutely awful. And obviously the way the title race is going, Stephen, you're watching every Rangers game now, or you're listening to it on the radio, or you're trying to catch it because it's just the way it is. It's so tight.
I was fuming. I said to you before we started, I was at my mum's on Saturday afternoon, so I didn't get a chance to really keep up with the football. I was building some furniture and stuff, so I found that we spoke a couple of weeks ago about my incessant refreshing of apps and stuff like that. So I found that was getting quite distracting. So I thought, right, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'll stick the radio on. So I stuck on Radio Scotland, BBC Scotland. And I only became interested, as I always do, when it became apparent that they might get a bad result here. So it was 0-0 after 81 minutes or something like that. Can't remember when, but stuck the radio on, and it was like about 6 seconds and they'd scored. I was absolutely spewing.
His fault.
Yeah, it is your fault.
It just, I was like, goal at Ibrox. Like one of those wee voices they've got. So
Nailed it.
Absolutely nailed that.
Furious.
Did you watch Sports Scene, anybody?
Oh,
yes.
Since you brought up the BBC coverage now, I know what people are going to say. I already know what people are going to say, right, in the comments about, but can they not just dress normally? Says the man in the massive pink sweatshirt. But honestly, I'm watching sports. This is fashion, okay? This is fashion, right? But Stevie Thompson, you need to stop with the skinny jeans. You're 43. I checked. I googled it. You're 43. You're dressing like me 20 years ago, going to Carbon with the skinny tie and the fucking the
sweatbands on,
the pointy shoes and the winkle pickers,
charity wristbands.
He's got a Livestrong bracelet on. Still. No, Stevie, it has to stop. And then who was it? Ricky Foster was dressed like Angelo Sepethimu. It was, I don't know what's going on then. And Kenny Miller was on it this week.
Ghostface Miller.
The Ghostface Miller, right? But he wasn't up for a change. He wasn't dressed like fucking Peaky Blinders. Somebody obviously had to work for him because the size of that bonnet he was wearing pitch side 2 weeks ago was enormous. And we have enough trouble. We don't, we've got to get everything in frame here, but you can just imagine the camera guys get everything set up and then Kenny comes and it's like that. The cameraman has to fucking zoom all the way back to get that fucking helmet in. Right, okay, but just a few tips, right, for non-professional broadcasters. For the second week in a row, we're just giving the BBC a few tips. Spring has sprung and our friends at Manscaped have the tools for some spring cleaning in your pants. Trust me, your confidence is going to be blooming like the flowers upcoming this spring. Time to clear out that winter bush and join 4 other million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. If you go to manscaped.com, use the code TIMS, you get 20% off and free shipping at Manscaped. And by using that code, you will also receive 2 free gifts. So head on over to manscaped.com, use code TIMS for 20% off, free shipping and some free gifts. That's manscaped.com.
The title race I think we were on, so it was unfortunate they were playing against the lowly Aberdeen at the weekend, but I didn't go into that expecting anything else. We still need to concentrate on Celtic, but I'm so glad got the job done because of the many difficult fixtures we've got this season. That was one of the toughest. There's no doubt about it. Going into that was one of the most daunting because of previous records. So to have done it and really done it well, and to have players come in from the cold, some we've had doubts over in the very recent past, for them all to deliver, as I've already said, all the surprise inclusions, all delivered. The defence was excellent. James Forrest put in his best showing for ages. I've watched it back. James Forrest was good. I don't want to get too carried away in like massive, like hysterical swings, like because that's his 27th game this season. Basically, his first like properly good performance he's had. So parking that just now and seeing how he gets on, but it's a much more encouraging performance. In many ways, he sort of kept it simple. He didn't really do an awful lot of dribbling, because we've been talking about that all season, how he doesn't really necessarily take players on an awful lot anymore, but he kept it simple. He played good passes, good first-time passes, and he's always been good at that inside and took his goal extremely well. So more encouraging.
He's a good eliminator. He's good. He's good at eliminating runs, taking guys a wee walk and opening up space, but he's also quite good at when he doesn't dwell on the ball. See, when he just stands up, hits it and goes, and as long as he gets that space to get the wee clip cross in, he's no bad. It's when he tries to overthink and complicate it.
I thought it was much better from him. Now, after the game, you can see why Ange done it, because he does sort of stay out wide, but there was points in the game where I was still frustrated with him, and not because of anything he was doing on the ball, it was off the ball. He was coming inside, and that might be an instruction from Ange, but the way I looked at it, Jota on the other side was always starting out in the touchline, and when James Forrest came inside, there was a big space over on that right hand side. If he stays out wide and stretches it, their left back has to go across, which leaves more space in the middle. So I was just looking for a wee bit more of him to stay a bit wider. But as you said, I thought he did try and take players on a good few times. His passing was decent and he can be effective. I still don't see him as a long-term player coming in. It will just maybe be this sort of guy coming in and out. But one of his main things that has really deserted him recently is a good finisher, and that was a cracking finish from him. But when you're watching the game, that's the Forrest we want to see, a guy that can come in and do that job. And when you're talking about the fixtures, the remaining 4 fixtures before the split, previous to this was Livingston, Ross County, Rangers and St Johnstone, and that Livingston one really stood out for me. Like, what happens at Ibrox will happen. We've got another game against them, but that one, you're like, that's the one where you're so many. I think it's more the fans that are nervous than the players, but to go out and put that performance in there, and I'm trying to rack my brain to think of a better one, but I think that's Celtic's best ever performance on a plastic pitch in Scotland.
It's not up against much, you might be right. That is true. I certainly wouldn't argue with that. There haven't been many over the years. Brendan Rodgers famously said he's never seen a decent game on a plastic pitch, so that was much better and much more encouraging. I think it was a really good performance, considering all we were up against, considering the team, the style of the team we're playing against, and the surface.
Effing huge.
They are. They're big boys. We needed that though, didn't we? Because performances haven't been great as a week. And look, this is a weekly podcast, so I know some people in the comments, when we say Celtic were rubbish this week, people say plenty more games to go. Yeah, but it's every week. It's a week to week thing. But performances have sort of tailed off a wee bit. But I did feel when the St Mirren game was coming up, I felt like the blip was going to be over. And although we weren't brilliant against St Mirren, there was a few players I know you want to talk about that didn't perform too well. It was quite matter-of-factly complete, the game, wasn't it? It didn't really cause us much trouble.
No, barely any. I think it was absolutely fine, the St Mirren game. It was a wee bit tense in the stadium, but that's because we're in the business end of the season. It's still very tight and all that. I don't want to criticise anyone for that, but what I did come away feeling about that game was that we're a long time into it now, so everything just really needs to calm down about this playing out for the back stuff. And honestly, I feel like even calling it playing it out for the back is over-egging it now, because it's football now, right? There is no successful team in Europe that just fucks the ball up the pitch, right? That doesn't happen. Just launch it up the pitch. No one plays like that. It's modern football, the way Celtic are playing just now. It's nothing new either.
Just football now.
Yeah, that's it. So everything needs to calm down about it. It's nothing to do with Ange Postecoglou. It's nothing to do with systems, Ange ball, or that. That's how football is played nowadays. And anyone who doesn't do that looks like Livingston, quite frankly. Celtic are never going to employ another manager ever again whose primary tactic is to launch it up the pitch. That's never going to happen. So I think everybody needs to kind of calm down a wee bit, but I do understand why people get tense about it in the stadium when we're not winning.
Especially in the last couple of weeks, there's been a few hairy moments where we've been messing about way at the back and it's not really went our way, but overall, it's not going to. Ange's not going to go. Oh, by the way, there was one instant in the Hibs game, Starfelt, where you made a bit of an arse of it. So we're never passing it out for the back again. It's over.
But it's successful. Even for one or two wobbles, that's always going to happen. But that happens all over the pitch. It's just that in defence, it's obviously more recognisably scary that when it happens. But the reason I bring this up is to just give a little nod to some of the players that are in here. Starfelt inexplicably still divides people, but again, I don't know how much of that is just stuff online, to be honest.
He was great against Livingston.
Yeah, he was, and I had a moan about him last week because I thought he was terrible against Bodo, and I thought, right, he's just, I can't really see what it is he offers on the ball, despite the fact I think he's a really good defender, but he was much better against Livingston, and I think that he's been a really good signing. Just quite frankly, I think he's been a success. And we're never going to get a guy we're never going to get another Virgil van Dijk.
No.
Those are once in a generation. You can kind of tail back the generational talents of defenders like all the way back to like the 80s, but there's only one every kind of decade where you get that's much better than everyone else around them. You're going back like Mark Reaper and Paul Elliott and guys like that. So you're getting one every sort of solid decade. So I'm not saying we need somebody like that, but Starfelt has been a great signing. Again, I had a moan about him last week because I felt he let us down with some of his use of the ball, but his defensive work is...
What are the chances we give up?
Yeah,
that's simple. Like the St Mirren game, they didn't have anything. Livingston, all they had was launching it up, and like you can say, look, Celtic aren't great in set pieces, and yeah, mildly I'd agree with that. They haven't been great this season, but look, what do you do again? Are you going to play your biggest players you've got in Livingston just to negate how they play? It's simply, they're going to cause chances because of the way they play, and there's nothing you can do about that sometimes because they're huge, man. But the way Starfelt and Carter Vickers played against St Mirren and Livingston, both absolutely solid, both probably the two of them in the running to be man of the match in both games, both excellent. And as you say, we don't give up chances because of the way we play, because we're keeping the ball. It's really encouraging right now because all you're thinking right now is like, don't give up set pieces, Celtic, because we won't concede. And that's really good. Rarely have you had a solid Celtic defence like this that your only worry is the set pieces. But then when you think, well, we don't score from set pieces, that's 2 games in a row where we got goals from set pieces as well. So bringing that into play as well is brilliant as well. And we can highlight a lot of players throughout the week, and even like Maeda, Livingston away, you're thinking, oh no, man, that's not going to be the game for him. He was nearly, I don't want to say brilliant, but he done absolutely everything he could. And the thing I love about Maeda is if he doesn't I think he will be a good player for Celtic. Don't think he'll be Kyogo, but that's not his fault. But see if he doesn't quite hit the heights at Celtic, it'll not be through lack of effort. The thing I love there's loads of things I love about him actually now. Like his effort is unbelievable. His pressing's brilliant. I think about 3 or 4 times their keeper shanked it out the pitch because he was pressing. Same against St Mirren with Jack Alnwick. And then he's scoring headers, but he's not a big, powerful guy, which means he's getting into these positions. He will be a guy, even if he's not really had great games for Celtic, but he's got 5 goals now just from being in goal-scoring positions. Add that to working hard. You've seen the flops over the years at Celtic. They don't try. They don't have a heart. They aren't in the right positions. Even when they're having bad games, they don't put it in. Maeda does all of that, and now all I'm really looking for him is that sort of game where he maybe gets a double or he creates a goal or something. You go, that's the game he's arrived. He's just not quite had that, but everything else around him, he's just looking good, and he's trying to hold the ball up as well. I'm really encouraged by him, and you can see why. The St Mirren game, he didn't get a goal, but his all-round play, just through the sheer work rate, puts St Mirren under so much pressure that I thought he's kind of got to start at the weekend.
Well, it goes a long way, that, with the fans. I mean, obviously we expect very, very good players at Celtic, but what we demand is...
expect good players.
Well, we expect a certain level of player that are going to be able to play in Europe and all that kind of stuff. That's the main target. But what we also demand is for people to try really hard. I mean, that goes
especially
a long
after
way.
Last season.
As much as I'm bemoaning what some of the things that happen in Scottish football, such as celebrating the shite that we see on a weekly basis from the opposition. Oh wow, what a great point! But as much as I sort of belittle that, a good thing about Scottish football is that we do like trials, and I don't mean that to patronise Maeda. I still think he's a good player, but the example it's like that comical own goal that Livingston scored. Everybody's like, yes, Maeda. He was never near it. We didn't come close to touching the ball. He was like, yes, you man.
But he was there in a goal scoring position,
it,
which meant a defender made a mistake.
Exactly, but everyone was dying to give him credit for the goal, despite the fact they didn't touch it. But Maeda, again, I can only say what I said 2 or 3 weeks ago, is that I'm perfectly relaxed about his contribution. It hasn't really fully clicked for him, but is that a criticism for a guy who's just come from the other side of the world and scored 5 goals in 10 games or something?
Well, that's it. He's starting to remind me a bit of a Bada. You know, for weeks and weeks and months, we're like, kind of like a Bada's only doing this, and then the goals crop up, and then the assists, and the goals keep going. Well, Maeda, we're like, he's not really burst onto the scene the way Kyogo has, but he's scoring basically a goal every 2 games or something like that.
It only becomes a problem if guys like Jota, Abada, Forrest, Rogic aren't contributing and we aren't getting goals elsewhere, but we are, and Maeda's contributing as well. It's just if you get that bad game where the supply's not good, they get like Jota has a bad game and you're like, we need more from Maeda. But right now he's just doing everything but having that wonder game. You can go, he's arrived now.
Ayeti was on the bench.
So he was.
I thought it was a mirage because then the Livingston game rolls about and he's nowhere to be seen.
Speaking of surprises, there's that again.
You've got a chance, or you've had a chance rather. You've seen 2 kind of different lineups: the Ange Postecoglou, the St Mirren game, and then the Livingston game. Going forward, how do you think the team's going to look? More Livingston, because I can see the bit on, because I sort of said it to Stephen on the pre-match thing, like bit on at the back in the 6th position didn't really worry me so much against Livingston because he's not going to have an awful lot to do.
No.
He's really going to just be there to recycle the ball, and then Callum McGregor and Rogic further up the pitch is probably quite a dangerous combination. So that midfield 3, obviously there will be tweaks in there depending on the opposition, but I'm quite comfortable with that.
I'm comfortable to an extent, but it depends who you're playing. Livingston, it was fine. It's a tight pitch. There's not much space in the middle, so having those 3 guys in there, fine. When we come up against teams like maybe Dundee United away in the Cup and Rangers, where the midfield players might be a bit pacier and have a bit more energy about them, I would maybe worry about that. But Celtic and a couple of players like Matt O'Reilly, I'd say, could come back in, but Hatate right now, you're looking at, he's maybe dropped down a wee bit. But with the games coming up, they're difficult games, and for a change, we've got 8 days till the next one, then a week to we'll have 5 days till the next one, so we've got a break in between. So this is what Ange's wanted, time to work with the players, and I think it'll be different players for different games, because we've seen, like, we beat Rangers and that's the team, but then the next week he changes it. So I think Juranovic will say, well, I deserve to come back in. Giacomakis will say, well, I scored a hat-trick recently and I've been brilliant, but I only get injured, I got the cold or whatever it was, so I should be back in. So having these options and having finally guys that you're thinking, they can come in and do a job, that's all we ask.
It's a point of order here. We are playing Dundee United in the Scottish Cup quarter-final next Monday.
Yes.
So that means the flagship podcast, the next week's version of this that you're listening to or watching, will be out on the Tuesday. Why are we playing on a Monday?
Polish, mate. The regime don't like us, man.
Why? They
wouldn't let it on the Saturday night, so it has to be Monday night.
Oh, right, is it? Oh, they didn't want Saturday night football?
Yeah.
They ruin everything, man.
Grown, I know. Inconveniencing us, which is the true crime here.
I know.
Inconveniencing the listener, if anyone, or the viewer. It's a pain. But a game more than a week since our last one, which seems crazy at this time of year.
You think that'll benefit us? Because Rangers title challenge, they've got a couple of games against Reds.
More than a year there, more than a week.
They've got a couple of games against Reds start to factor in there. Admittedly, I think they're playing Dundee either side of it.
2 games against Dundee, but we play Dundee United next week. Then the following Saturday we play Ross County at home, and then they play the Sunday. So that could be us 6 points clear with the better goal difference going into the Sunday game.
Ross County though,
Malky's doing. It's hard to say they're doing well because everybody's stuck beside each other. But I didn't think they'd survive this season, so he's done better than I thought they would. So look, these games are difficult, but this is what Ange's wanted, time with the players. But come these 8 days, he'll be like, crap when Celtic don't play during the week.
8 games left though, and I'm sure I've heard Ange say this, and I'm sure people have said this about Ange, but I'm sure I've heard Ange say it, I just couldn't find it. I'm sure Ange said he preps his teams to really hit form at the tail end of the season. No, I don't know what that means. Why can't you just be good the whole time?
Yeah. That's a fitness thing, isn't it?
Is it? It was kind of like that.
Don't you dare play 100%.
Well, do you know what it reminded me of? You know how in like movies, where you see a car chase and the guy's like foot to the floor and he's driving away and he's trying to get away from the other car, and then there's another shot where it cuts to him and he looks in the rearview mirror, and then you always get that shot of the foot where he's stamping on the accelerator more. Like, why weren't you just pressing the accelerator the whole time? That's kind of when he's like, I'll prep my teams for the running. But it's encouraging, the result that we saw against Livingston, and as you say, time on the training pitch, players coming back from injury, David Turnbull supposedly on the horizon, Kyogo on the horizon. I mean, it's I don't want to say it's going to be plain sailing, but we seem well equipped for the run-in, is I suppose what I'm saying.
Certainly hope so, and I'm glad you mentioned Turnbull there, because I'm really looking forward to getting him back, to be honest. That's one of those kind of, don't know what you've got till it's gone with Turnbull. I think when Hatate and O'Reilly came in, we were all blown away by the quality that they showed right away. We thought, well, David Turnbull struggles to get back in this team now. We just forget David Turnbull, just sweep him aside. But now that they have finally dipped in form significantly, you start to think, well, David Turnbull might even still be the most productive attacking midfielder we've got now. I think he's probably the most consistent of the lot. These guys will all have their, I was going to say have their day, but they've kind of already had that against the Huns and all that. But they'll all contribute massively. But David Turnbull's been a cracking player this season. I don't want to forget about him just because he's been out of the team for quite some time.
It's a y'all must have forgot.
It's going to be a y'all must have forgot by the time he comes back into the team. But we've all been talking about Kyogo. But David Turnbull has been a key player for Celtic this season. I think he could be big. If he comes back in time for the run-in, I think he could be crucial.
The run-in's going to be a tricky one. When's the split? 2 weeks?
Yeah, no, well, we've got Ross County, Rangers, St Johnstone, then the split. There's also an international break in there, so it'll be the second week in April, I think.
God only knows what's going to happen with that international game with Scotland and Ukraine. Announcement from Celtic that they're taking part in the Sydney. I genuinely like this Sydney tournament thing. See, when it first came out, it was like November, and I kind of was like, I didn't think it through completely, because I was just like, look, we've got a league here. It's away next year. I mean, I barely know what I'm going to do next week, never mind like next November. So I was like, we need to probably think about that at the time. Then it came out, it's the Rangers are going to be involved, and it's sort of been pitched as like, I think it's 2 Sydney teams against Celtic and Rangers in some sort of tournament, and it's been pitched as like Ange Ball's homecoming. So initially I was like, it kind of cheapens what we have here. It kind of cheapens the derby, right? But part of me also at the back of my head is like, but that's football now. Like that's football, and apparently the money on the table was like that as much money coming in from playing these 2 games in Australia that you get from a whole league season back home domestically. So it's not to be sniffed at. And then I saw how furious the Rangers fans were about it. And
that's the game changer, that one.
Yeah, it takes a lot to unite the Celtic and Rangers fans, but they're both on the same side of this, that it shouldn't be happening. I think it's the thing that sticks in my craw a wee bit is I can't square the circle of somehow Celtic and Rangers not coming to some sort of agreement on this, working together. But also at the back of my mind, I'm just like, there's no love lost between these clubs. Look at the way they act towards each other. Look at the way Celtic and Rangers treat each other domestically, with the snidey statements, the comments, the tweets, the tickets. I just refuse. Part of me just refuses to think these 2 teams got behind some shady wee desk and went, right, how do we make some fucking right good? I think what's more likely is whoever organises these, with the Australian League or whoever it is, has come to Celtic and Rangers, went, look, there's £6 million to split between the pair of you, but you're only getting it if the other one agrees. And then they both kind of looked the other way and went, right, okay, we'll take it. Also, just before I turn to you guys, I don't want to dismiss completely out of hand the Celtic fans that stay in that part of the world.
No.
As if their opinion, as if, you don't get to see a Glasgow derby, you want one, come over and get a ticket. Well, no, you're probably never going to get a ticket for one, do you know what I mean? Yeah. So just dismissing the attitudes of these guys like they don't matter, like the people over there aren't the real fans and they don't get to see a Glasgow derby, and it should won't. I just ease up on that a wee bit.
Global support and all that, but to a point.
We can't sit here and claim, look, Celtic are one of the biggest supported clubs in the world, but then not include everybody. And when I first seen it, it was sort of touted as the Glasgow derby in Australia. I was like, nah.
It's a bit WWF, that, isn't it?
It just...
a 1v1 friendly, it was sort of rumoured to be.
And I don't even like when English teams do that sort of hanging, like when there's a Manchester derby in America or something. I think it's like, just play any other team. And then it came out, obviously, that there was going to be 4 teams. And I'm like, look, all right, there's maybe a chance they won't play each other, but I think it's 3 games in 5 days, so they will. I think they could have done it. Celtic go to Australia and it would have sold as many tickets without Rangers. Celtic go to Japan and it would have sold as many tickets. Just didn't need to include them there, but they're there. But right now I can't be too bothered about it. It's good that we're getting there. And the thing that really sort of maybe changed my mind even more was the fact that the Bears went mental. They were ravenous. We are playing second fiddle. There's rumours we are getting more money. It's Andrew's homecoming. It's like bringing your wee annoying brother along to a party in it. Take him with you, going to like, So look, it would be class. I was thinking, wouldn't they be great? But now I'm like, I'd quite fancy going actually, man.
Well, look, we're not going to go. We're not going to give it any coverage. We're not even going to pay any attention to it. We're just going to black it out as if it never happened. Obviously, unless you want to fly us over VIP, first class, free bevy, the full shebang Celtic, then we will consider giving it some coverage.
The whole thing is just a bit naff, to be honest. To me, I get all the pros, the supposed pros about how it's loads of money, but to me that it says more about the money we get in Scotland rather than how impressive this friendly friendly fee is, because it's dismal the money that Celtic get from TV rights and things like that. So to say that we'll get more than we'll get for TV rights for the whole season, just all that does is show that in embarrassing light, to be honest. I understand. Here are the pros, right? There's that. There is the opportunity to just sort of spread the message a little bit. That sounds a bit corny, but football has to be in some way or other global these days, or we're going to fall further behind than we already are. We need to explore all opportunities to spread the brand and all that pish about, right? So, and any opportunity to increase revenue to Celtic has to be at least looked at, because
we do slate Scottish football for not advertising itself or bigging itself up, don't we?
Because anyone's still waiting for basically the reason or the way Scottish football is going to catch up is because everybody else is going to fail or the bubble's going to burst. Yeah. Forget it, right? Absolutely forget that.
Look, it was happening in world football.
It's never going to happen. So Celtic need to explore ways. However, this is just a bit icky. I don't want that to be cut off and for my point to be ambiguously pro this thing, right? At all. I think this is pretty pish, to be honest. I don't like the Rangers thing. I think you could, if you turn down the opportunity of this tournament, you could easily make a load of money by going to Australia and playing, take your pick, Leeds.
Yeah.
Something like that. You're going to sell out if you go to Australia with Celtic. It doesn't have to be this ersatz old firm thing that nobody wants any part of.
We're half of nothing.
Yeah, it directly flies in the face of the we're half of nothing. I think the North Curve Green Brigade were clear about that. It was a direct contradiction of the we're half of nothing unless there's a few bob to be made. Again, Celtic need to increase revenue in order to not basically just wither on the vine when it comes to European competition. But I think this is a lot of pish, to be honest. I just can't be bothered with it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not stamping my feet. I'm not furious about it. I know a lot of people are. Some things I'm not going to feign fury over. Some things that are just sort of nothing to do with me. Again, you've made the point about the Australian fans getting an opportunity to see that kind of thing, even under a slightly watered down guise. But I still think the whole thing is just a bit naff, and we could have done, but look, play Man United or something like that and make twice as much money.
That's kind of my feelings on it. Like, we don't. What Mel said, we don't need Rangers.
Yeah,
we don't need Rangers. I think the thing. So I just don't see much benefit to us for playing Rangers over there. I just said you could play anyone, but but I am kind of like I think the thing that's make me recoil a wee bit is the notion that forget it. We don't want it. Stick up here. As if these, like you said, like these people don't matter. The Australian fans and the fans of that side of the world. Like there's plenty of support out there for it. And I'm kind of like, see if people want to go and watch it and spend their money and they're into that, then you don't really get the right to tell them they're less of a fan or their opinion doesn't count. See if you want to go and pay your money and watch it, that's fine. But
we've received messages. Sorry to jump in. We've received messages just to make that clear that along those lines, people are telling us that they're quite excited about it because they're not going to get
Celtic have got quite a large Australian contingent now. It's the reason all things happening. But I totally agree with you. It is naff. It's cheesy. It's a bit commercialised. It's all that sort of stuff. That sort of murky side of the game. And I think ultimately as well, if it was Celtic v Man U, you'd probably sell more tickets.
Oh, in like Asia, and like
Yeah.
go to Japan and play Man United and treble
Do
your
you
money.
think maybe Man U are out of reach for us then? Do you think maybe we're a bit behind the times with looking at that? If Man U had time to play glamour friendlies
Aye, well,
during the World Cup, they'd be going, look, with all due respect, we're not going to Australia to play Celtic. We're going to Spain to play Boca Juniors or something. Do you know what I mean?
Saying nothing about the standard of the team just now, purely about the strength of the brand of Man United, probably, yeah. But they're just an example.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
so
like
many.
Leeds is at Wolves. Anybody apart from Rangers. I wonder how much extra money they're getting for playing Rangers. It's probably a lot, but I mean, through ticket sales, it'll probably be negligible.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of people in our Discord in Australia as well, fans that are really looking forward to it. But the thing with doing these friendlies or these tournaments for me would be to bring in money to get yourself advantage. If your rivals are getting the same money, what's the point?
Yeah.
You're not going to you're not going to get any more than them. So you're trying to build an advantage on the teams around you. You're just both going out there to do the same thing, so it just
we should alter the deal them. We should Donald Trump them. We should sign the contract, right, that says we all get £3 million, but it's based on absolutely everyone's participation. And then 1 week before the tournament, just go, nah, we're not coming. Because they'll have that money spent. Rangers will have that money. What do you mean you're not coming? Nah, we don't need the £3 million. And because we don't. Because we've got, what, 6 million quid in the bank or something, as per the last video, so we don't need the money. So
we've sorted it.
Aye, we have sorted it. And on that bombshell, we shall wrap up this flagship episode of 20 Tins. Thank you so much to everyone who watches. If you watch us on YouTube, more than half the people that watch us on YouTube are not subscribed. So please subscribe and hit that little bell so you know when the video comes out. Thank you so much to everyone who listens on podcast apps. And of course, if you support us on Patreon, you are special friends of ours. Goodbye.